She needed the job. He needed someone who wouldn't quit. What the paralyzed mafia boss didn't expect was that the desperate single mom would be the first person who refused to run, and the only one who made him want to stay alive. Rosa Alvarez's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel of her 15-year-old Honda. The mansion loomed ahead through the pre-dawn darkness, a sprawling stone fortress perched on the hill like a sleeping beast. She'd driven past places like this before, cleaning offices and buildings where men in $1,000 suits never looked at her twice. This time, she had an appointment. Mrs. Alvarez? The security guard's voice crackled through the intercom at the gate. You're early. I have a son to pick up from school at 3, Rosa said steadily. I need to leave on time. A pause. Then laughter. Cold and brief. Ma'am, nobody leaves on time here. Most don't make it to lunch. The gates swung open anyway. Rosa had heard the stories. Marco DeLuca's assistants quit within days, sometimes hours. The agency had been desperate enough to offer her double the usual rate, plus benefits that could finally get Mateo the asthma medication his pediatrician recommended. The kind she couldn't afford on a housekeeper's salary. She'd stopped asking why the pay was so high. Desperation had a way of making questions seem like luxuries. The mansion's entrance was all marble and cold grandeur. A woman in a crisp black suit waited inside, her expression carved from the same stone as the building. Miss Chun. The woman introduced herself without offering a hand. Head of household staff. You've reviewed the medical protocol?
Rosa nodded.
She'd spent 3 nights memorizing the file. Spinal cord injury, C5, C6 level, limited upper body mobility, full-time wheelchair use, high risk of autonomic dysreflexia. She knew the warning signs, the emergency procedures, the medications.
Good.
Because Mr. DeLuca doesn't repeat himself, Miss Chen's heels clicked against the floor as she walked. And he doesn't tolerate incompetence, sympathy, or excuses. The last assistant cried during her first meeting. She was gone within an hour. I don't cry easily, Rosa said. We'll see. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, then down a wide hallway lined with paintings Rosa suspected cost more than her entire apartment building. Miss Chen stopped at double doors made of dark wood. He's awake, she said quietly. He's always awake by 5. Insomnia since the accident, she turned to face Rosa fully. One piece of advice. Don't try to help unless he asks. And don't show pity. Ever. The doors opened. The room was vast, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the city, lights below. But Rosa's attention locked on the man in the wheelchair facing those windows. Even seated, Marco DeLuca radiated the kind of presence that made people step back. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, a sharp jawline, and eyes that tracked her movement in the window's reflection with predatory focus. Another one, he said, his voice low and rough. You look terrified. I look employed, Rosa corrected, setting her bag down carefully. That's different. Marco turned his wheelchair with practiced precision, and Rosa got her first full look at him. The photos in the file hadn't captured the intelligence in those dark eyes, or the barely contained fury that seemed to simmer beneath his stillness. Employed, he repeated, almost amused. For now. What's your name?
Rosa Alvarez.
Rosa, he said it slowly, testing it. Spanish. Mexican-American. 2nd generation. You have a child. A son. 7 years old. You're behind on rent, medical bills piling up, and your ex-husband hasn't paid child support in 11 months. Marco recited the facts like he was reading a grocery list. Desperate enough to take a job everyone with sense runs from. Rosa felt ice slide down her spine. Of course he'd had her investigated. She lifted her chin, anyway. Desperate enough to stay, she said. That's what you need, isn't it? Someone who won't quit. Something flickered in Marco's expression. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. What I need, he said softly, dangerously, is someone who follows orders without questioning them. Who understands that I don't require a nursemaid or a therapist or a saint. I require competence. He gestured toward a bottle of water on a table just out of his reach. Hand me that. Rosa crossed the room, picked up the bottle, and held it out. Marco didn't take it. Open it. She twisted the cap off, handed it to him again. His fingers closed around it, the movement clearly difficult, requiring focus. He took a long drink, then set the bottle in his lap. 6 a.m. You'll bring my morning medication. 7:30 physical therapy appointments 3 times weekly. You'll drive. 8 a.m. breakfast. I have specific dietary requirements. Any questions? Several, Rosa said. But I'll learn as I go. Most people who say that don't last the day. Most people probably had other options. For the first time, Marco smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. Miss Chun, you can go. I'll break this one in myself. The door closed behind Miss Chun with a soft click that sounded too much like a trap snapping shut. Marco wheeled closer, studying Rosa with an intensity that would have made her look away a year ago. But she'd stare down bill collectors, social workers who questioned her fitness as a mother, and a man who'd once promised to love her before his fists taught her what his love actually meant. She held Marco's gaze. Here's your first real order, Marco said quietly. Leave me alone for the next 2 hours. Don't check on me. Don't come back early. Don't hover outside the door. Go downstairs, have coffee, and let me be.
It was a test.
Rosa recognized it immediately. He expected her to disobey out of concern, or to panic about leaving him unattended. She glanced at the medical alert bracelet on his wrist, the call button mounted on his wheelchair, the phone within easy reach. 2 hours, Rosa confirmed. I'll be back at 7:15 to prepare for the therapy appointment. She turned and walked toward the door. You'll be back sooner, Marco called after her. They always come back sooner. Rosa paused at the threshold, looked back over her shoulder. Mr. DeLuca, she said calmly, I don't know who the others were. But I'm here because I need this job more than I need you to like me. If you want to be alone, you'll be alone. If you need help, you'll ask. Either way, I'll be exactly where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there. She closed the door gently behind her. In the hallway, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Downstairs in the kitchen, 3 men in dark suits sat around a table playing cards. They looked up when Rosa entered, their expressions ranging from amusement to curiosity. New assistant, one of them said, not a question. I give her 3 days. Generous, another replied. I say noon. The third man, older with graying temples, studied Rosa more carefully. Don't let Marco get in your head, miss. He's testing you. I know, Rosa said, pouring herself coffee from the pot on the counter. Her hands were steady now. That's why I'm going to pass. The men exchanged glances, and she caught the ghost of a smile on the older one's face. Rosa checked her watch. 7:15 was exactly 2 hours away. She sat down at the table, cradled the warm mug in her hands, and waited. At exactly 7:15, Rosa knocked once and entered Marco's room. He was by the window again, but this time his wheelchair was positioned at an odd angle, slightly tilted. His face was pale, a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. Rosa's nursing training kicked in instantly. She recognized the signs. He tried to reach something, overextended, and his chair had caught on the rug. Don't, Marco said sharply when she moved toward him. I didn't call you. Rosa stopped mid-step. Your chair is. I know what my chair is doing. His voice was tight with pain and fury. I said don't. Every instinct screamed at her to help. But Rosa had learned long ago that pride, especially wounded pride, could be more dangerous than any physical threat. She stepped back, crossed her arms, and waited. 5 minutes passed. Marco's breathing grew labored as he tried to adjust the wheelchair himself, his limited upper body strength working against gravity and the twisted angle. His knuckles were white against the armrests. The therapy appointment is at 8, Rosa said calmly, checking her watch. The facility is 20 minutes away. Traffic will be building. Then we'll be late. Your insurance requires you to call 48 hours in advance to reschedule. Miss Chun left me the file. Marco's jaw clenched. Another 2 minutes passed. Rosa could see the calculation in his eyes. Pride versus practicality, control versus consequence. If you help me, he said finally. Each word clipped. You do exactly what I say. Nothing more. Agreed. Come around to my left side. Place your hand on the back of the chair. There on the handle. When I say, pull back and slightly right. Not hard. Just steady pressure. Rosa followed his instructions precisely. The moment she applied pressure, Marco used his functional arm strength to shift his weight. The chair rolled smoothly back into position. He didn't thank her. She didn't expect it. The van is in the garage, Marco said, his breathing still elevated. Keys are in my desk drawer. You'll drive. The medical transport van was equipped with a wheelchair lift and hand controls. Rosa had practiced on a similar vehicle during her certification course, but that had been 3 years ago. Marco watched her hesitate at the driver's seat. Problem? He asked. No, Rosa lied, starting the engine. The first 5 minutes of the drive were tense. Rosa's hands gripped the wheel too tightly, overcompensating on turns. In the rear-view mirror, she could see Marco's reflection, his expression unreadable. You've never driven one of these before, he observed. I have. Just not recently. Another lie you think I need. Rosa's hands relaxed slightly on the wheel. You're right. I don't lie well. I drove one twice 3 years ago during training. And you took this job anyway. I told you, I need it more than I need you to like me. She changed lanes smoothly this time. Besides, you're still breathing, the van is still moving, and we'll be on time. So far, I'd say I'm doing fine. In the mirror, she caught the corner of his mouth twitch. Not quite a smile, but close. The physical therapy facility was discreet and clearly expensive. The staff knew Marco by name but treated him with professional distance. No pity, no hovering. Rosa understood immediately that this was how he'd train them. She waited in the observation area while Marco worked with his therapist, a stern woman named Dr. Patel who pushed him through exercises that left him shaking with effort. Rosa watched him struggle to grip modified weights, saw the frustration flash across his face when his body refused to cooperate. This was the part the agency file hadn't captured, the daily, grinding reality of his limitations. When the session ended, Marco's shirt was soaked with sweat. Dr. Patel spoke quietly with him about progress, about realistic goals. Rosa pretended not to listen while memorizing every word. In the van afterward, Marco was silent for the first 10 minutes of the drive home. They used to bet on me, he said suddenly. My men. Whether I'd walk again. Whether I'd eat a bullet instead. He stared out the window. Now they bet on how long my assistance lasts. Rosa kept her eyes on the road. What's the record? 4 days. Woman named Patricia. Former military nurse. She made it 4 days before I found the breaking point. And what was her breaking point? I told her exactly how pathetic she looked, trying to fix someone who didn't want fixing. Rosa processed this. That won't work on me. No. I already know I look pathetic, Mr. DeLuca. Single mother, 2 jobs before this one, living in a neighborhood where I hear gunshots twice a week. Pathetic is my baseline. She glanced at him in the mirror. You'll have to be more creative. For the first time, Marco laughed, a short, genuine sound that seemed to surprise him as much as her. Rosa Alvarez, he said thoughtfully. You might actually be a problem. Good, Rosa replied, pulling into the mansion's driveway. Because I don't plan on being easy. That night, she overheard the guards in the kitchen, their voices drifting through the walls. She made it through day 1, someone said. Barely counts. Day 2 is when Marco really starts testing them. I still say she's gone by Friday. Rosa packed her bag quietly, set her alarm for 4:30 a.m., and went home to her son. She had no intention of proving them right. Rosa's phone rang at 5 a.m., 45 minutes before she was supposed to leave for the mansion. Miss Alvarez? Her neighbor's voice was apologetic and rushed. I'm so sorry, but my mother, she had a fall. I have to drive to Phoenix right now. I can't watch Mateo today. Rosa's chest tightened. Her backup sitter had moved last month. The after-school program didn't open until 7. It's okay, Mrs. Chen. I hope she's all right. Rosa ended the call and looked at her son, still asleep on the couch they shared in their studio apartment. His inhaler sat on the milk crate they used as a nightstand. She had exactly one choice, and it was a terrible one. Mateo woke up confused when she bundled him into the car, his Spider-Man backpack clutched against his chest. "Where are we going, Mama?" "To my work. Just for today, Mijo. You'll be very quiet, okay?" "Very, very quiet." The security guard at the mansion gate looked at Mateo in the back seat, then at Rosa. "Ma'am, we can't allow." "I know the protocol," Rosa interrupted. "But my childcare fell through, and I can't leave a 7-year-old alone. I'm asking for one day, while I arrange backup. I need to call Miss Chen." "Miss Chen doesn't arrive until 7:30. Mr. DeLuca needs his morning medication at 6". Rosa kept her voice steady. "So call him." The guard's expression said he'd rather face armed intruders than wake Marco DeLuca early. But he picked up the phone. Rosa waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was about to lose this job on day 2. The asthma medication, the rent, the chance at stability, all of it about to vanish because she'd brought her son to a mafia boss's mansion. The gate opened. "Mr. DeLuca says the child stays in the kitchen," the guard said, sounding shocked. "He wants to see you in his office."
Now.
Rosa walked Mateo to the kitchen, where the overnight security team was finishing their shift. The older guard from yesterday, the one who'd almost smiled, looked at Mateo with something like understanding. "I'll keep an eye on him," he said quietly. "Name's Vincent." "Thank you," Rosa whispered, then headed upstairs. Marco's office was darker than his bedroom, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk. He sat behind it, already dressed, his eyes sharp despite the early hour. "You brought a child to my home," he said flatly. "Yes." "Explain." Rosa didn't make excuses. She laid out the facts: the neighbor's emergency, the lack of backup, the choice between abandoning her post or bringing Mateo. "You could have called in sick," Marco observed. "On day 2? You would have fired me." "I still might." "I know," Rosa met his gaze. "But I showed up anyway. That should count for something." Marco studied her for a long moment. "How old is he?" 7. "Does he know what I am? What happens here?" "He knows you were hurt and need help."
He knows I work for you.
"That's all." "Keep it that way." Marco wheeled toward the door. "Get my medication. And tell your son that if he touches anything, asks inappropriate questions, or makes a nuisance of himself, you're both gone." "Understood." "Understood." But when Rosa returned to the kitchen after delivering Marco's medication, she found Mateo standing in the doorway to the main hall, and Marco had wheeled out to meet him. Rosa's blood turned to ice. "You're in a wheelchair," Mateo observed, his child's bluntness cutting through the silence. "Yes," Marco replied. "Can you walk at all?"
No.
"Does it hurt?" "Sometimes." Rosa started to intervene, but Marco raised his hand slightly, a clear signal to stop. Mateo tilted his head, considering. "My mama says you're important. Are you nice?" The question hung in the air. Vincent had stopped pretending to read his newspaper. Even the other guards had gone quiet. Marco's expression was unreadable. "No," he said finally. "I'm not nice." "Oh," Mateo processed this with 7-year-old logic. "Mama says it's better to be honest than nice anyway. She says nice people lie to make you feel better, but honest people help you know the truth." Something shifted in Marco's face, so subtle Rosa almost missed it. "Your mother is a wise woman," Marco said softly. "What's your name?" "Mateo Alvarez. I'm 7.5. I like dinosaurs and space, and I'm going to be a paleontologist or an astronaut. I haven't decided yet. Those are very different careers." "That's what Mama says." "But I have time." Mateo glanced back at Rosa, then at Marco again. "Are you going to fire my mama? She really needs this job. We need my asthma medicine." Rosa wanted to disappear into the floor. Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held something Rosa hadn't heard before, something almost like respect. "Your mother is not fired," he said.
Today.
"But this doesn't happen again." "Okay," Mateo agreed cheerfully. "Thank you, sir." He ran back to the kitchen, already chattering to Vincent about whether the mansion had ghosts. Marco looked at Rosa. Your son has no fear. He's never learned to be afraid of people, Rosa said quietly. I've tried to keep him that way as long as possible. That won't last. I know. But I'm trying anyway. Marco wheeled past her without another word. But that afternoon, when Rosa collected Mateo to leave, she found a paper bag waiting by the door. Inside were 2 inhalers, the expensive kind, the ones insurance never quite covered. No note.
No explanation.
Rosa held the bag against her chest and blinked back tears she'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. The physical therapy facility was busier on Wednesday mornings. Rosa maneuvered the van into the accessible parking spot while Marco sat in rigid silence. He'd barely spoken during the drive, his mood darker than usual. Inside, Dr. Patel was waiting with another therapist, a younger man Rosa hadn't seen before. Mr. DeLuca, this is Dr. Harrison. He'll be observing today's session for a research study on spinal cord recovery protocols. Marco's jaw tightened.
No.
The study could help. I said no. Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Dr. Harrison, who stepped forward with practiced sympathy. Mr. DeLuca, I understand this is difficult, but your case presents unique. Get out, Marco said quietly. The 2 words carried enough menace to make Dr. Harrison step back. Perhaps we should discuss this, Dr. Patel suggested carefully. What happened next took 3 seconds. Marco's hand shot to his wheelchair controls. The chair jerked forward, ramming into a therapy table hard enough to send equipment clattering to the floor. His face was white with fury, tendons standing out in his neck. You want to study me? Marco's voice rose. Treat me like a specimen? Get the hell out of my sight before I... Mr. DeLuca. Rosa stepped between him and the therapists, her voice calm but firm. Dr. Harrison is leaving. Dr. Patel will do your regular session. Alone. She turned to the young doctor. Please wait outside. Dr. Harrison fled. Marco's breathing was ragged, his hands shaking on the armrests. Rosa crouched down to his eye level, lowering her voice, so only he could hear. You have every right to refuse, she said quietly. But breaking equipment and terrifying staff isn't anger. It's loss of control. And you're better than that. Don't presume to tell me what I am. I'm not presuming. I'm observing. Rosa stood, put her hands in her pockets. Dr. Patel, can you give us 5 minutes? When they were alone, Marco wheeled to the window, his back to Rosa. They look at me like I'm broken, he said finally. Like I'm something to fix or study or pity. That researcher wanted to document my failure. Maybe, Rosa acknowledged. Or maybe he wanted to learn from your progress. But it doesn't matter. You said no. That should have been enough. Marco turned his chair to face her. And if I lose control again, then I'll be here to tell you the truth. Just like I am now. Rosa checked her watch. You have a session scheduled. You can do it and maintain your dignity, or you can leave and let them think you're afraid. Your choice. Something in Marco's expression hardened into resolve. Get Dr. Patel. The session was brutal. Dr. Patel pushed Marco through range of motion exercises that left him gritting his teeth. Rosa watched from the observation area as he struggled through each movement, sweat dripping down his face. Afterward, in the facility's bathroom, Rosa helped Marco transfer to the accessible sink to wash up. It was the first time she'd assisted with something this personal, and she moved with clinical efficiency, offering support without commentary. You're wondering why I keep coming, Marco said, catching her reflection in the mirror. If it's this hard and the progress is minimal, it's not my place to wonder. But you do anyway. Rosa met his eyes in the mirror. I wonder why anyone would choose to suffer if they didn't believe it mattered. Marco was quiet for a moment. My nephew is 6. Before the accident, I promised to teach him to play basketball. He flexed his fingers slowly. Dr. Patel says if I work hard enough, I might regain enough grip strength to hold a ball. Maybe pass it to him. That's all. Just that. Rosa's throat tightened. That's not nothing. It's not enough either. But it's what I have. They were heading to the exit when Dr. Harrison appeared again, blocking their path. His tone was conciliatory but condescending. Mr. DeLuca, I apologize if I overstepped. But surely you understand that your resistance to help is part of the psychological trauma. Move, Marco said coldly. Dr. Harrison didn't. I'm trying to help you accept. He said move. Rosa's voice cut through the hallway. Every head turned. Mr. DeLuca has declined your study. Continuing to pressure him is harassment. Step aside, or I'll file a formal complaint with the facility director. Dr. Harrison's face flushed. You're just
His assistant.
who knows his rights and your obligations. Rosa's eyes were steady.
Move. Now.
Dr. Harrison stepped aside. In the van, Marco was quiet until they reached the highway. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, I did. Why? Rosa kept her eyes on the road. Because respect isn't something people should have to beg for. You said no. That should have been the end of it. No one has defended me like that since before the attack. Then the people around you need to do better. Marco studied her profile. You keep surprising me, Rosa Alvarez. Good, she replied. Predictable people are easy to break. You need someone difficult. For the first time since she'd met him, Marco smiled, genuinely smiled. I'm beginning to think, he said quietly, that you're exactly what I need. Rosa felt something shift between them. Not friendship.
Not yet.
But the foundation of something that might become trust. She didn't smile back, but her hands relaxed on the wheel. Rosa was wiping down the kitchen counters Thursday evening when Vincent appeared in the doorway. The mansion was quieter than usual. Marco had dismissed her early, claiming he needed to work alone. Coffee, she offered. Vincent shook his head, glanced over his shoulder, then stepped closer. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You seem like a good person, Miss Alvarez. So I'm going to give you advice you didn't ask for. He paused.
Leave.
Tonight. Don't come back. Rosa's hand stilled on the counter.
Why?
Because you're making people nervous. The way Marco listens to you relies on you. It's changing things. And change in this world. Vincent's expression was grave. Change gets people killed. I'm just his assistant.
You're more than that now.
You stood up to him. You defended him. You brought your son here and Marco allowed it. Vincent leaned against the doorframe. There are men in this organization who've served him for 20 years and never seen him show that kind of consideration. Do you understand what that means?
Rosa understood perfectly.
She'd seen the looks from other staff, the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms. I need this job, she said quietly. There are other jobs. Not ones that pay for my son's medication. Not ones with health insurance that starts immediately. Rosa met Vincent's eyes. I can't afford to leave. You might not be able to afford to stay. Before Rosa could respond, voices drifted from the hallway, angry, hushed. She recognized Marco's lieutenant, a man named Sal who'd watched her with cold calculation since day one. Changing him, making him soft. We can't afford soft right now. Another voice, younger. She's just a nurse. What harm? She's a liability. And liabilities get eliminated. Rosa's blood went cold. Vincent caught her arm gently. Go out the back entrance. I'll tell them you left already. But Rosa's feet wouldn't move. Because beneath the anger in those voices was something else. Fear. And fear in dangerous men led to dangerous decisions. She thought of Mateo, asleep at Mrs. Chen's apartment, waiting for her to pick him up. She thought of the inhalers Marco had left for him, the way he'd smiled in the van today. She thought about running, about disappearing into the city, finding another job, starting over again. She'd done it before. She could do it again. Vincent was watching her, and she saw understanding in his eyes. Whatever you're thinking, think harder. These aren't people who forgive mistakes. Rosa grabbed her purse, headed for the back door. Her hands shook as she pushed it open. Then she heard it. A voice from Marco's office, sharp with alarm. Boss, your blood pressure? A crash. Something heavy hitting the floor. Rosa dropped her purse and ran. She burst into Marco's office to find him slumped in his wheelchair, his face flushed dangerously red, sweat pouring down his temples. Autonomic dysreflexia. The life-threatening complication she'd memorized from his medical file. Sal and two other men stood frozen, clearly having no idea what to do. Get out, Rosa snapped, already moving to Marco's side. She loosened his collar, checked his position. Something was triggering the response. When did this start? 5 minutes ago, Sal said, not moving. We were discussing business. I said get out. Rosa didn't wait for them to obey. She quickly checked Marco's catheter line, kinked.
There.
She adjusted it, elevated his head, monitored his breathing. Rosa, Marco managed through gritted teeth. The safe. Code is 7-2-9-4. Emergency medication. Red box. She found it, administered the prescribed dose. 2 agonizing minutes passed before Marco's color began to return to normal, his breathing steadying. You should be in the hospital, Rosa said quietly.
No hospitals.
Too exposed. Marco's voice was weak but firm.
Ivy fine.
You're not fine. This could have killed you. But it didn't. He looked at her. Something unreadable in his expression. You were supposed to be gone. I was leaving. Then I heard. Rosa stopped. Why did this happen now? What triggered it? Marco's eyes shifted to the doorway, where Sal still stood, his face carefully blank. Bad news, Marco said simply. Sometimes the body reacts before the mind can process.
Rosa understood.
Whatever they'd been discussing, it had been serious enough to literally threaten Marco's life. Sal stepped forward. We should continue this conversation, boss. The situation requires immediate. Tomorrow, Marco cut him off. Leave us. When they were alone, Marco closed his eyes briefly. You should have left when Vincent warned you. You knew. Vincent's been with me for 15 years. He's loyal, but he's also smart enough to know when someone's in over their head. Marco opened his eyes. You are, Rosa. In over your head. I know. And you're staying anyway. It wasn't a question, but Rosa answered. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Rosa thought of Mateo's inhaler, the eviction notice she'd hidden in her glove compartment, the interview she'd missed at the diner because this job paid triple what they offered. Not everyone has good choices, she corrected. Some of us just choose between bad and worse. Marco studied her for a long moment. If you stay, things will get more dangerous. Not less. Then I'll be careful. Careful might not be enough. Rosa stood, gathered the emergency medication to return it to the safe. Then I guess we'll both have to be smart about it. She left before Marco could argue, collected her purse from where she dropped it, and headed home. In her car, her hands finally shook. Vincent's warning echoed in her mind. But louder still was the memory of Marco's voice. The safe. Code is 7-2-9-4. He'd trusted her with that. In his most vulnerable moment, he'd trusted her. Rosa started the engine and drove toward Mateo. She'd chosen. For better or worse, she'd chosen. It happened on Saturday night, 3 days after Vincent's warning. Rosa wasn't supposed to be there. Her shift ended at 6 on weekends, but Marco had developed a fever that afternoon. Nothing serious, but enough that she'd stayed late to monitor him. By 11 p.m., the fever had broken, and she was gathering her things when the lights died. The mansion plunged into absolute darkness. Emergency lighting should have kicked in immediately. It didn't. Rosa's nursing instincts overrode her fear. Marco was upstairs, alone, in a wheelchair. If this was just a power outage, he was vulnerable. If it was something worse. She didn't finish the thought. She moved. The stairs were treacherous in the dark. Rosa used her phone's flashlight, taking them 2 at a time. Behind her, she heard shouts from the security team, boots on marble, the metallic click of weapons being readied. Not a power outage, then. Marco's bedroom door was locked from the inside. Rosa pounded on it. It's Rosa. Open up. The lock clicked. Marco sat just inside, his service weapon, the one modified for his limited grip, resting in his lap. His face was calm, but Rosa saw the calculation in his eyes. How many exits from this room? She asked immediately.
1.
The door you just came through. That's not good enough. Where's the safe room? Down the hall. Requires a code and biometric scan. I can't get there alone fast enough. Rosa's mind raced. The bedroom was a trap. One entrance, windows that didn't open, no way to defend if someone breached the door. But moving through the dark hallway was equally dangerous. Gunshots cracked through the night. Close. Too close. Rosa made a decision. The bathroom.
Now. Rosa.
It has a door that locks, no windows, and they'd have to get through 2 rooms to reach us. Move. Marco didn't argue. He wheeled toward the attached bathroom while Rosa grabbed his phone, his medication bag, anything essential. She followed him in, locked the door, then shoved a heavy linen cabinet against it. They waited in the dark. Rosa crouched beside Marco's wheelchair, her heart hammering so loud, she was certain he could hear it. Your phone, she whispered. Can you reach your security team? Marco was already trying. Lines are jammed. Someone cut communication. More gunshots.
Closer now.
Rosa heard boots in Marco's bedroom, furniture being overturned. Boss. Sal's voice, urgent. Where are you? Marco raised his weapon, aimed at the bathroom door. Rosa's hand found his arm. Wait, she breathed. What if it's a trick?
Marco hesitated.
In that pause, they heard it. A second voice, quieter, unfamiliar. Check the bathroom. Marco's jaw clenched. Rosa felt him tense, ready to fire. The bathroom door handle rattled. Then Vincent's voice cut through. Stand down. Intruders are neutralized. Boss, if you're in there, it's clear. Marco didn't lower his weapon. Code phrase, Vincent. Regina 77. The tension in Marco's shoulders eased. He nodded to Rosa, who moved the cabinet and unlocked the door. Vincent stood there with 3 other guards, all armed. His eyes went to Rosa immediately. You're still here. Apparently, Rosa managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Good thing, Vincent said. The panic button in Marco's room was disabled. Someone inside helped them cut the power, jam communications. If you hadn't gotten him secured, he didn't finish. Marco wheeled out of the bathroom, his weapon now holstered. Casualties? 2 intruders dead. 1 of ours injured. And we found the mole. Vincent's expression darkened. Tony. He's being held in the basement. Rosa saw something pass between Marco and Vincent, a silent communication built on years of trust. I want to see him, Marco said. Boss, you should rest. The fever. I want to see him now. They moved through the mansion like a military operation. Rosa stayed close to Marco, her hand on the back of his wheelchair, not guiding, just present. The emergency generators had kicked in, bathing everything in harsh red light. In the basement, a young man was zip-tied to a chair, blood streaming from his nose. He looked barely 25. Marco stopped a few feet away. Why? Tony's head hung low. They said they'd kill my sister. Said they'd make it slow if I didn't help. So, you led them to me instead. I didn't think they'd actually. Tony's voice broke. I didn't think they'd really try to kill you. Marco's face was unreadable. You've been with me for 2 years, Tony. 2 years, and you didn't trust me enough to tell me your sister was in danger. I was scared. So you should be. Marco wheeled closer. But not of them. Not anymore, he turned to Sal. Find the sister. Bring her somewhere safe. Then make it known, very publicly known, what happens to people who threaten my people's families. Tony's head snapped up. You're helping her? I'm sending a message. Touch what's mine, and the cost is everything. Marco's voice was cold as winter. You, however, are done. You're out.
Tonight.
You take your sister, and you disappear. If I ever see you again, if I even hear your name again, the mercy ends. Understood? Tony nodded, tears streaming down his face. Outside, Rosa finally allowed herself to breathe. You saved my life tonight, Marco said quietly. Again, I just did what needed doing.
No.
You stayed when you should have run. You thought clearly when most people would have panicked. Marco looked at her fully. You're not just my assistant anymore, Rosa. You're someone I trust. Do you understand what that means in my world? Rosa thought of Vincent's warning, of Sal's suspicious glares, of the danger that had just invaded this mansion. It means, she said slowly, that I'm all in now. Whether I want to be or not. Whether you want to be or not, Marco echoed. The night air was cold. Dawn was still hours away. Rosa had never felt more awake in her life. The stress from the breach caught up with Marco 48 hours later. His fever returned, this time with complications, a respiratory infection that his compromised immune system couldn't fight off alone. Dr. Patel insisted on hospitalization. Marco resisted until his oxygen levels dropped low enough that even his stubbornness couldn't argue with the numbers. Rosa rode with him in the ambulance, watching monitors beep and flash while paramedics worked. The private hospital was discreet, accustomed to patients who required both medical care and security. Two of Marco's men stationed themselves outside his room. Rosa stayed inside. It was 3 a.m. when Marco finally woke, the oxygen mask making his breathing sound mechanical and strange. "You should go home," he said, his voice muffled. "Your son needs you. Matteo is with my neighbor." "He's fine," Rosa adjusted his foreline without looking at him. "And you pay me to be here." "I don't pay you for overnight hospital shifts." "Then consider it overtime." Marco pulled the oxygen mask down.
Rosa.
"Don't," she finally met his eyes. "Don't tell me to leave.
Don't tell me you're fine.
Don't push me away because you think being vulnerable makes you weak." "It does make me weak. It makes you human." Rosa sat in the chair beside his bed. "There's a difference." The machines beeped steadily in the silence. Through the window, the city lights spread out like scattered stars. "My brother did this to me," Marco said suddenly. "The paralysis. That's what you're wondering, isn't it? Who hurt me badly enough to end up in a wheelchair?" Rosa had wondered, but she'd never asked. "You don't have to tell me. I know. But I'm going to anyway." Marco stared at the ceiling. Antonio. Younger by 3 years. Charming, ambitious, impatient. He wanted control of the family business. Wanted it faster than I was willing to give it. So, he tried to kill you. He tried to kill me and make it look like a rival family. Almost worked. Marco's jaw tightened. They found him 2 weeks later. My men brought him to me, asked what I wanted done.
Rosa waited.
I told them to let him go. Leave the country, start over, disappear. Marco's voice was flat. He was my brother. I couldn't. Even after what he did, I couldn't. "That's not weakness," Rosa said quietly. "My men thought it was. Some still do. They think the attack changed me, made me soft." He looked at her. "Maybe they're right." Rosa leaned forward. "Do you want to know what I think? Do I have a choice? I think loving someone enough to let them live after they tried to kill you isn't soft. It's complicated. It's painful. But it's not weak." She paused. "Weakness would be pretending it didn't matter."
"You're not doing that."
Marco studied her face. "Your turn." "My turn?" "You know my worst betrayal. Tell me yours." Rosa's throat tightened. She hadn't spoken about it in years. But something about the sterile hospital room, the late hour, the fact that Marco had just trusted her with his deepest wound, it made her want to return the honesty. "His name was David," she began. "Matteo's father. We met when I was 22, working as a nursing assistant. He was charming, attentive. Made me feel seen." She twisted her hands in her lap. "The first time he hit me, I was 6 months pregnant. I'd burned dinner." Marco's expression darkened, but he stayed silent. "I told myself it was stress. Money problems. The pregnancy. Every excuse except the truth, that he enjoyed it." Rosa's voice remained steady through force of will. "After Matteo was born, it got worse. But I had a newborn, no money, no family nearby. So I stayed." "What changed?" "Matteo turned 3. David came home drunk, started yelling. Matteo got between us." Rosa's hands clenched. "He was 3 years old, and he stood in front of me like a tiny shield. That's when I knew if I stayed, I'd teach my son that this was love. That this was what men do. So you left." "So I ran. Middle of the night. 1 bag, my son in my arms. We lived in a shelter for 4 months. Then a friend's couch. Then finally our apartment." Rosa looked at Marco directly. I'm not strong because I left. I'm strong because I stayed alive long enough to realize I could. The machines beeped. A nurse checked vitals and left quietly. We're both survivors then, Marco said finally. Betrayed by people who are supposed to love us. Is that why you test people? Rosa asked. To see if they'll betray you too? Probably. Marco's smile was bitter. How am I doing so far? You haven't broken me yet. I'm not trying to anymore. The admission hung between them, significant, vulnerable. I know, Rosa said softly. Marco reached out, the movement slow, difficult with his limited mobility. His hand found hers, fingers curling with effort. Rosa didn't pull away. When I get out of here, Marco said, things are going to get worse before they get better. The breach, the mole, the weakness people think they see, it's going to bring challenges. I know. You could still leave. I'd give you severance, references, enough money to start over somewhere safe. Rosa looked at their joined hands, hers small and worn from work, his struggling but determined. I told you once, she said, I don't quit easily. This isn't about quitting. It's about surviving. Then I guess we'll survive together. Marco's grip tightened fractionally. You're either very brave or very foolish, Rosa Alvarez. Probably both, she admitted. Outside, dawn was beginning to break. Rosa stayed in the chair, her hand in Marco's, and watched the city wake up. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The envelope appeared on Rosa's car windshield Thursday morning, tucked under the wiper blade like a parking ticket. Inside was a business card, no name, just a phone number, and 5 crisp $100 bills. Rosa's hands shook as she read the handwritten note. Call us. We just want information. Small things. What time he wakes. Who visits. 500 now, 2,000 a week. Your son deserves better. She sat in her Honda, staring at the money. 2,000 a week would change everything. New apartment. Reliable childcare. Mateo's medication without choosing between it and groceries. All for small things. Harmless things. Rosa thought of Tony, zip-tied in the basement, crying about his sister. She thought of Marco's brother, the betrayal that had stolen his ability to walk. She started the engine and drove to the mansion. Marco was in his office, reviewing reports with Sal. He looked better. The hospitalization had been 5 days ago, and color had returned to his face. But his eyes were tired. Rosa, he greeted her. You're early. We need to talk. Alone. Sal's expression hardened. Anything you need to say to the boss, you can say in front of.
Sal, Marco interrupted quietly.
Give us the room. Sal left, but his look promised consequences. Rosa closed the door, pulled the envelope from her purse, and placed it on Marco's desk. He opened it slowly, examined the contents. His face revealed nothing. When did you get this? This morning. Did you call the number?
No.
Marco set the envelope down. Why not? The question caught Rosa off guard. Because I work for you. Because it's wrong. 2,000 a week is a lot of money for a single mother. Marco's voice was neutral, unreadable. For small things. Harmless things. What time I wake up, who visits. That wouldn't really hurt me, would it? Rosa's chest tightened. Are you testing me? I'm asking if you're tempted. Of course I'm tempted. The words burst out. Do you know what 2,000 a week means to someone like me? It means Mateo gets the nebulizer treatments his doctor recommended. It means I stopped choosing between electricity and food. It means I'm not one emergency away from being homeless. So, why didn't you take it? Rosa met his eyes. Because small things become big things. Because harmless information gets people killed. Because, she stopped, surprised by the emotion in her own voice. Because you trusted me with your safe code. You told me about your brother. You helped my son when you didn't have to. And I'm not going to repay that by selling you out for grocery money. Marco was quiet for a long moment. You understand what bringing this to me means. It means whoever sent it will try harder. Or threaten me. Or... Rosa's voice steadied.
Yes.
I understand. Marco picked up his phone, dialed. Vincent. I need a security detail on Rosa Alvarez. 24 hours. Start immediately. He listened briefly. I don't care what Sal thinks. Just do it. He hung up, turned back to Rosa. You'll be followed everywhere now. Home, the store, Mateo's school. It's for your protection, but it's also surveillance, Rosa finished. To make sure I don't change my mind. To make sure they don't hurt you for refusing. The distinction mattered, Rosa realized. Marco wasn't watching her because he doubted her. He was protecting her because he believed her. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Marco's expression darkened. Refusing them makes you a target. And my protection comes with a price. What price? Before Marco could answer, the door opened. Sal walked in without knocking, his face tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk about her, he said, jerking his chin toward Rosa.
Now.
I told you we were in a meeting. And I'm telling you she's a liability. Sal pulled out his phone, showed Marco something on the screen. We've been running background on everyone after the breach. Look what we found. Rosa couldn't see the screen, but she saw Marco's expression shift. Her ex-husband, Sal continued, was questioned 3 years ago in connection with a car theft ring. The ring had ties to the Marchetti family. Our rivals. I didn't know that, Rosa said immediately. David and I were separated by then. I never. Convenient, Sal cut her off. She shows up, loyal and helpful, gains your trust. Then information starts leaking, attempts on your life increase. Enough, Marco's voice was cold steel. Rosa brought me evidence of a bribe attempt this morning. If she wanted to betray me, she had the perfect opportunity. Or she's playing a longer game. Building trust before the real betrayal, Sal leaned forward. Boss, I've been with you for 12 years. I'm telling you, she's too perfect. Too helpful. Nobody is that loyal without an angle. The accusation hung in the air. Rosa felt her world tilting. She brought the envelope to prove her loyalty, but Sal had twisted it into evidence of guilt. Get out, Marco said quietly. Sal blinked. Boss. I said get out. Before I decide you're the one I can't trust. Sal's face flushed, but he left, slamming the door behind him.
Rosa stood frozen.
Marco, I swear to you, I didn't know about David's connections. We've been divorced for 4 years. I haven't spoken to him in. I know. You know? I had you investigated before you were hired. I know about David's arrest record, the theft ring, all of it. Marco's eyes were steady on hers. I also know you testified against him when the police questioned you. You cooperated fully, even though it meant he might retaliate. Rosa's knees felt weak. Then why did you hire me? Because people who've survived betrayal recognize it in others. Because you chose the right side once before, Marco paused. And because I'm betting you'll choose it again. Sal doesn't trust me. Sal doesn't trust anyone. That's what makes him good at his job. Marco wheeled closer. But it also means he sees threats everywhere. Don't let it shake you. Rosa wanted to believe him. But she'd seen the doubt in Sal's eyes, heard the certainty in his voice. She was caught now, trapped between those who wanted to buy her and those who wanted to bury her. And the only person who believed in her was the one man she couldn't afford to fail. David showed up at Mateo's school on a Tuesday afternoon. Rosa got the call from the principal at 2:15. Her ex-husband had appeared at pickup time, demanding to see his son, claiming parental rights he'd abandoned 4 years ago. She broke every speed limit getting there. David stood in the school office, looking exactly as she remembered. Handsome in a way that had once made her heart race, now just made her stomach turn. He'd gained weight, lost some hair. But the smile was the same. The one that promised and threatened simultaneously. Rosa, he said warmly, as if they were old friends. You look good. You have no right to be here. Rosa kept herself between David and the door to the classrooms where Mateo waited. The custody agreement is clear. Supervised visitation only, which you haven't requested in 3 years. I'm his father. You're a name on a birth certificate. That's all. David's smile hardened. I've been getting my life together.
New job, new place.
I want to see my son. The principal, Mrs. Chun, no relation to Rosa's neighbor, intervened carefully. Mr. Alvarez, without proper legal documentation, I can't release Mateo to you. Mrs. Alvarez has sole custody. For now, David said, his eyes never leaving Rosa's face. But I've got a lawyer now. Good one, too. Says I've got a strong case for joint custody. Especially since Rosa's new job puts our son in danger. Rosa's blood went cold. What? Working for Marco DeLuca? Really, Rosa? David's voice dripped false concern. Our son around organized crime? A judge won't like that. Get out, Rosa said quietly.
Now.
I'll see you in court. David headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Rosa? My lawyer says we can drag this out for months. Cost you thousands you don't have. Unless, he smiled. Unless we come to an arrangement. He left before Rosa could respond. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely sign Mateo out. Her son chattered about his day, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in their lives. That night, after Mateo fell asleep, Rosa sat at her tiny kitchen table and did the math. A custody lawyer would cost at least $5,000 up front. Court fees, evaluations, lost work time. She was looking at $10,000 minimum. She had $800 in savings. The business card from the envelope was still in her purse. She pulled it out, stared at the number. $2,000 a week. Just for small things. Rosa picked up her phone.
Put it down.
Picked it up again. Then she called Marco instead. He answered on the second ring.
Rosa?
It's almost midnight. I need help. The words came out broken. And I hate that I have to ask. But I don't know what else to do. 20 minutes later, Rosa sat in Marco's study. She'd driven to the mansion in her pajamas, too desperate to care how she looked. Vincent had let her in without question. Marco listened without interrupting as Rosa explained everything. David's appearance, the custody threat, the impossible costs. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. He's being paid, Marco said finally. David, someone is funding this. What? The timing is too convenient. You refuse a bribe, and suddenly your ex-husband, who hasn't cared about custody in years, appears with an expensive lawyer and knowledge of where you work. Marco's expression was grim. They're applying pressure. If money won't make you cooperate, maybe threatening your son will. Rosa felt sick. So what do I do? You let me handle it. Marco, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Marco wheeled closer. I have lawyers on retainer. Good ones. They'll file an emergency motion to block David's petition, document his abandonment, his criminal history. By Friday, you'll have a court order preventing him from going anywhere near Mateo. That could take weeks. Cost thousands. It'll take 3 days and won't cost you anything. Rosa shook her head. I can't accept that. It's too much. Rosa, Marco's voice was firm. You protected me during the breach. You refused a bribe that would have made your life easier. You brought your son to me when you were desperate and trusted me to be decent. He paused. Let me return the favor. This isn't the same. This is my problem, not yours. You became my problem the moment they tried to use you against me. Marco's eyes were hard. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened her. Instead, Rosa felt something like relief. If I accept this, she said slowly, I'll owe you. In your world, that means something. In my world, loyalty is currency. You've already paid. Marco picked up his phone. I'm calling my attorney now. He'll meet with you tomorrow. Get the paperwork started. Marco. This isn't charity, Rosa. It's strategy. They're using David to destabilize you, to make you desperate enough to cooperate. I'm removing their leverage.
Rosa understood.
This wasn't kindness, it was chess. But chess or not, it was also protection. Real protection. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Marco looked at her for a long moment. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being just my assistant. You became someone I can't afford to lose. The admission settled between them, heavy with implications. Thank you, Rosa whispered. Don't thank me yet. Accepting my help means you're in deeper. The people who sent that envelope won't stop. They'll escalate. I know. And you're staying anyway. Rosa thought of Matteo, sleeping peacefully in their apartment. She thought of the life she'd built from nothing, the strength it had taken to run from David the first time. She thought of Marco's safe code, his trust, the way he'd looked at her in the hospital. "I'm staying," she confirmed.
Marco nodded.
"Then we do this my way. Complete protection, you and Matteo both. New security protocols. And if David or anyone else tries to threaten you again," his voice went cold, "they'll learn exactly what it costs to threaten someone under my protection." Rosa should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time since David appeared, she felt safe. The charity gala was Marco's idea, a public appearance to prove he wasn't hiding, wasn't weak, wasn't afraid. Rosa thought it was suicide. "You're still recovering," she argued the morning of the event. "The last time you attended a public function, someone tried to breach the mansion. Which is exactly why I need to attend this one." Marco was unmoved. "Hiding makes me look vulnerable. Vulnerable invites attacks. So, instead you'll make yourself an easy target?" "I'll make myself a visible leader." Marco adjusted his tie, a simple movement that still required concentration. "And you'll be there to make sure I don't die." Rosa wanted to refuse, but Marco's lawyer had already filed the emergency custody motion. David's petition had been blocked within 72 hours, exactly as Marco promised. She owed him this, even if it terrified her. The gala was held at a downtown hotel, glittering with the kind of wealth Rosa had only ever cleaned up after. She wore a borrowed dress. Miss Chun had provided it without comment, and felt profoundly out of place among women dripping in diamonds. Marco, however, commanded the room effortlessly. People gravitated to him, shaking his hand, making small talk while carefully avoiding any mention of his wheelchair. Rosa stayed close, monitoring his energy levels, watching for signs of fatigue. "You're hovering," Marco murmured during a lull.
"I'm observing."
"You're making people nervous." "Good. Maybe they'll think twice before trying anything." Marco's mouth twitched. "You realize half these people are more dangerous than the ones who attacked the mansion?" "Then I'll watch them twice as carefully." It was during the speeches that Rosa noticed him. A waiter, moving through the crowd with practiced efficiency. Nothing unusual, except he'd circled back to Marco's section 3 times without serving anyone. And his eyes kept tracking Marco's position with too much focus. Rosa's pulse quickened. She leaned down, whispered in Marco's ear. 10 o'clock. The waiter with the scar above his left eyebrow. "He's been watching you." Marco's expression didn't change, but she felt him tense. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "How long?" 10 minutes. Maybe more. Marco's hand moved subtly to his phone. "Vincent, we have a problem." Waiter, scar over left eye. "I want him identified in the next 60 seconds. Rosa kept watching. The waiter was moving again, this time toward the kitchen entrance. Her instinct screamed, "Marco, we need to leave."
Now.
"I'm not running from my own event." "I'm not asking." Rosa was already releasing the brake on his wheelchair. "We're going. You can fire me later." She didn't wait for permission. She wheeled Marco toward the side exit, moving quickly but not fast enough to cause panic. Vincent appeared from nowhere, flanking them, one hand inside his jacket. "Boss, we've got confirmation," Vincent said urgently. "The waiter isn't on the hotel's employee list. Security footage shows him entering through the service entrance 20 minutes ago." They were 10 feet from the exit when Rosa heard it, a sharp crack that could have been a champagne cork, but wasn't. "Gun." Vincent shoved Rosa and Marco through the doorway as chaos erupted behind them. More shots. Screaming. The organized elegance of the gala dissolving into terror. Rosa's training took over. She wheeled Marco into a service hallway, found a supply closet, pulled him inside. Vincent was there in seconds, weapon drawn, covering the door. Status.
Marco demanded.
Active shooter, still in the ballroom. SWAT's been called. We've got teams securing all exits. Vincent's voice was steady despite the adrenaline. But boss, we need to move you to the parking garage. The armored car is waiting. Casualties? Unknown. But Rosa got you out before the first shot. If you'd stayed, Vincent didn't finish. They moved through the service corridors like shadows. Rosa kept her hand on Marco's shoulder, partly for guidance, partly for reassurance. She could feel him trembling, not with fear, but with rage. The armored car was waiting. They were 50 feet away when a door burst open and the fake waiter appeared, weapon raised. Vincent fired first. The man dropped, but not before getting off a shot that ricocheted off the concrete wall inches from Marco's head.
Rosa est Siron.
She couldn't hear anything except her own heartbeat and Marco's sharp breathing. Then they were in the car, doors locked, speeding away from the hotel. Marco grabbed Rosa's hand, pulled her around to face him. You saved my life. Again. You saw the threat when no one else did. You got me out before he could position himself. If we'd stayed even 30 seconds longer. Marco's grip tightened. You disobeyed a direct order. I know. You manhandled me out of a public event in front of some of the most powerful people in the city. I know. You embarrassed me, undermined my authority, made me look weak. Rosa met his eyes. You're alive. I don't care how it looks. Something shifted in Marco's expression, something intense and almost vulnerable. Neither do I, he said quietly. The admission hung between them, loaded with meaning. Vincent cleared his throat from the front seat. Boss, we're heading to the safe house. Medical team is meeting us there to check you both over. Both of us. Miss Alvarez has blood on her dress. Rosa looked down. She did, splatter from when Vincent had shot the waiter. She hadn't even noticed. Her hands started shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, reality crashing in. She'd just lived through a second assassination attempt. Someone had tried to kill Marco in a room full of witnesses. Marco pulled her closer, his voice low.
Breathe, Rosa.
You're safe. We're safe. For how long? The question came out broken. How long until they try again? I don't know, Marco admitted. But I know this, you're not just my assistant anymore. You're not even just someone I trust. He paused, and Rosa saw something raw in his eyes. You're essential. To my survival, to my sanity, to everything. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Rosa understood.
Somewhere between the mansion breach and tonight, between hospital confessions and custody battles, the lines had blurred. She wasn't just his employee. She wasn't just his protector. She was his. And terrifying as that was, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I understand, she whispered. Marco's hand found her face, his touch gentle despite everything. Good, he said. Because I'm not letting you go. The safe house was a nondescript condo in a building Marco owned under a shell corporation. Rosa spent the first night there on a leather couch, unable to sleep, replaying the gunshots in her mind. By morning, Marco had made decisions. I'm restructuring, he announced over breakfast. Rosa, Vincent, Sal, and 3 other senior members of Marco's organization sat around the dining table. Effective immediately, Sal leaned forward. Boss, with all respect, now isn't the time for major changes. We need to show strength, not. I am showing strength, Marco interrupted. By adapting. 2 attempts on my life in 3 weeks tells me something is broken in how we operate. What's broken is we've gone soft, Sal said, his eyes flickering to Rosa. Ever since. Careful. Marco's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Finish that sentence very carefully, Sal. The room went silent. The old way isn't working, Marco continued. Running everything through violence and fear made sense when I could enforce it personally. But I can't anymore. My limitations are real. He gestured to his wheelchair, without self-pity. So we evolve. Evolve how? Vincent asked. Marco pulled out a tablet, displayed organizational charts. We're decentralizing. Each of you will run your own territories with full authority. You report to me weekly, but day-to-day decisions are yours. That's a lot of trust to put in people, one of the lieutenants observed. It's strategy. Decentralization means I'm not the single point of failure. Kill me and the organization doesn't collapse. It continues under collective leadership. Marco's eyes swept the table. It also means each of you has real power, real investment in success. Rosa watched the men process this. It was brilliant. Marco was turning his vulnerability into organizational strength. What's your role?
Sal asked.
Strategy. Vision. Final decisions on major moves, Marco paused. And I'm stepping back from anything that requires physical presence in dangerous situations. So you're hiding. I'm being smart. Marco's gaze locked on Sal. You want to challenge that decision, do it now. But know that I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you how this works going forward. Sal's jaw worked, but he stayed silent. Over the next 2 weeks, the restructuring took shape. Marco worked from the safe house, conducting meetings via secure video calls, reviewing reports, making strategic decisions. Rosa coordinated schedules, managed his medication and therapy, and slowly realized she'd become something more than an assistant. She'd become his interface with the world. You're essentially running my life, Marco observed one afternoon. They were alone in his office, reviewing the week's calendar. Someone has to, Rosa replied. You'd work 16-hour days if I didn't stop you. Would I? Yesterday, you tried to schedule 3 meetings during your physical therapy slot. The therapy can wait. No, it can't. Rosa closed the calendar app. Dr. Patel says you're making progress. Real progress. Your grip strength is up 15%. 15% of almost nothing is still almost nothing. It's 15% closer to holding a basketball for your nephew. Marco went still. You remembered that. I remember everything you tell me. Rosa met his eyes. That's my job. Is it?
Marco wheeled closer.
Because it feels like more than a job, Rosa. The air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. What do you want it to be? Rosa asked quietly. Before Marco could answer, his phone rang. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. Boss, we've got a situation. David Alvarez was just arrested trying to break into Rosa's apartment. Rosa's stomach dropped. Marco's expression went cold. Is he in custody?
Yes.
Police responded to a neighbor's call. But Marco. Vincent's voice was grim. He was armed. And he was asking about Mateo's schedule. Rosa couldn't breathe. Mateo? Where's Mateo? Safe. He's at school. I've already sent 2 men to watch him until you can pick him up. Marco was already moving. Vincent, I want David transferred to a private holding facility. Use Judge Morrison, he owes us. I want David held for 48 hours minimum while we figure out who's pulling his strings. You can't do that, Rosa said. That's illegal. So, is breaking into your home with a weapon while threatening your son? Marco's voice was steel. David made a choice. Now he deals with the consequences. Marco, if you do this, you're crossing a line. Using your power to protect you?
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Marco turned to face her fully. You wanted to know what this is between us? This is it, Rosa. I don't just employ you. I don't just trust you. I protect what's mine, and you are mine. Say, it isn't true if you can. Rosa opened her mouth.
Closed it. She couldn't say it.
Because it was true. Somewhere in the chaos of assassination attempts and hospital confessions, of her son speaking fearlessly to a mafia boss and Marco leaving inhalers by the door, something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just surviving in his world anymore. She was choosing it. 48 hours, she said finally. And then he goes through proper legal channels. No violence.
No threats. Just
containment. Agreed. And you tell me who's behind this. All of it. The bribes, David's sudden custody claim, everything. Marco studied her face. You sure you want to know? I'm already in this deep. I might as well understand why. Marco pulled up a file on his tablet, showed her surveillance photos. A man she didn't recognize, meeting with David outside a bar. More photos. The same man at the charity gala, talking to the fake waiter. His name is Victor Marchetti, Marco said. My biggest rival. He's been trying to take over my territory for 3 years. The attack that paralyzed me? I thought it was my brother, but new evidence suggests Victor funded it, used Antonio's resentment. And now he's using David to get to you through me. Yes. Rosa stared at the photos, feeling the full weight of her situation. She wasn't just caught in the crossfire. She was the weapon they were using against Marco. "What do we do?" she asked. "We remove the leverage." Marco's expression was calculating. David gets charged with breaking and entering attempted assault. With his record, he's looking at real prison time. The custody threat disappears. And Victor? That's more complicated. But Rosa, Marco's voice softened. "You've already done enough. This part, the dangerous part, that's on me." "I don't think it works that way anymore." Rosa set the tablet down. "You said I'm yours. That goes both ways, Marco. Your fight is my fight now." Something passed between them. Recognition, acceptance, maybe even something deeper. "Then we fight together," Marco said quietly.
Rosa nodded.
Together. For better or worse, she'd made her choice. And she wasn't running anymore. 3 months after David's arrest, Rosa received a job offer. It came from a private medical practice in Seattle, legitimate, safe, well-paying. A nursing coordinator position with benefits, regular hours, and no risk of being caught in crossfire. The recruiter had been enthusiastic. "Your references are impeccable." Dr. Patel spoke very highly of your competence and composure under pressure. "We'd love to have you start next month." Rosa held the offer letter in her hands, reading it for the 3rd time that evening. Mateo was asleep in his new bedroom. They'd moved to a better apartment last month, one with actual walls separating the spaces. Marco had insisted on covering the deposit when her landlord raised the rent beyond what she could afford. Another debt. Another tie. She heard the knock at her door at 9 p.m. Marco rarely came to her apartment. He preferred she come to him. Easier to control the environment, he'd said. But tonight he sat in his wheelchair in her doorway, Vincent waiting discreetly by the elevator. "You got an offer," Marco said. It wasn't a question. "How did you?" Rosa stopped. Of course he knew. He probably knew before she did. "Yes. Can I come in?"
Rosa stepped aside.
Marco wheeled into her small living room, his eyes taking in the space, the second-hand furniture, Mateo's drawings on the refrigerator, the stack of medical textbooks she'd been studying in her spare time. "Seattle is a good city," Marco said finally. "Far from here. Safe. Is that why you arranged it?" Marco's head snapped up. "What makes you think?" Dr. Patel doesn't know recruiters in Seattle. And the salary they offered is exactly 15% above market rate. "The same percentage you pay me above standard." Rosa crossed her arms. "You set this up." Marco didn't deny it. "You deserve options." "I had options. This is you trying to make the choice for me. This is me trying to give you an escape route." Marco's voice was tired. "David's in prison, but Victor Marchetti is still out there. 2 weeks ago, we intercepted another attempt. They're getting bolder, Rosa. Smarter. And eventually what? Eventually they'll succeed." Rosa sat on her couch, facing him. "And you think sending me away will keep me safe? I think staying will get you killed. Then why didn't you just fire me? Why the elaborate job offer?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. "Because if I fired you, you'd refuse to leave out of pride. Or obligation. Or whatever stubborn loyalty makes you stay even when you shouldn't." He met her eyes. "I wanted you to have something better to run toward, not just something to run from." Rosa felt something crack in her chest. "You're trying to protect me. I'm trying to keep you alive. By pushing me away. By giving you a choice. A real one, with no pressure, no obligation." Marco's hands gripped his armrests. "You've saved my life 3 times, Rosa. You've put yourself between me and danger, without hesitation. You've given me trust one didn't deserve and loyalty I haven't earned. Let me give you this, a chance at a normal life. For you and Mateo." Rosa looked at the offer letter on her coffee table. Seattle. Safety. A life where her son wouldn't grow up around security details and whispered threats. She thought about the woman she'd been 8 months ago, desperate, exhausted, willing to take any job that paid the bills. She thought about the first morning at the mansion, Marco's cold eyes testing her, expecting her to break. She thought about hospital rooms and custody battles, about Mateo asking if Marco was nice, about Marco's hand finding hers in the darkness. What if I don't want normal? She asked quietly. Marco stared at her.
Rosa?
What if I've spent my whole life trying to be normal, and normal just meant invisible, disposable? Rosa leaned forward. You asked me once what this was between us. I didn't have an answer then, but I do now. What is it? It's partnership. It's trust. It's choosing to stand beside someone even when it's dangerous, because the alternative, walking away, would be worse. Rosa's voice steadied. It's not love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's real.
And it's mine.
And I'm not giving it up for safe. Marco's expression was unreadable. You're saying no to Seattle. I'm saying no to running. There's a difference. Mateo deserves a mother who chooses her life instead of having it chosen for her. Who stands her ground. Who shows him that strong people don't always take the easy path. Rosa stood, moved closer to Marco. I'm not staying because I'm obligated. I'm staying because I choose to. Even knowing what it costs. Especially knowing what it costs. Rosa crouched down, bringing herself to his eye level. You restructured your entire organization because staying the same would have gotten you killed. You adapted. You evolved. That's what I'm doing too. Marco reached out, his hand finding her face with that careful, difficult movement she'd come to know so well. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish. You've said that before. It's still true.
Rosa smiled, genuine, unguarded.
Then, I guess you're stuck with me. I guess I am. They stayed like that for a moment, the weight of the decision settling between them. Rosa had chosen, truly chosen, to stay in Marco's dangerous world. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. There's one condition, Rosa said. Name it. You stop trying to make my choices for me. If I stay as an equal, a partner, not someone you protect by pushing away. Marco considered this. Then, slowly, he nodded. Equal partners. Equal partners, Rosa confirmed. She stood, retrieved the offer letter, and in front of Marco, tore it cleanly in half. For what it's worth, Marco said quietly, I'm glad you're staying. So am I. Marco wheeled toward the door, then paused.
Rosa?
The job offer was real. I didn't manipulate it. I just made sure you knew it existed. I know, Rosa said. That's why I'm staying. Because you gave me the choice instead of making it for me. After Marco left, Rosa checked on Mateo. Her son slept peacefully, his Spider-Man nightlight casting shadows on the wall. She thought about the life she could have given him in Seattle, safe, normal, predictable. Then she thought about the life they had here, complicated, dangerous, but undeniably real. She'd spent years surviving. Maybe it was time to actually live. Rosa turned off the light and went to bed, her phone on the nightstand showing tomorrow's schedule. Morning medication at 6, physical therapy at 8, afternoon meetings, evening review. The same routine that had started 8 months ago. The job no one lasted a week doing. But Rosa Alvarez was a no one. She was someone who'd chosen to stay, who'd stood her ground, who'd found strength in the most unlikely place, beside a paralyzed mafia boss who'd somehow become more than an employer, more than a friend. Whatever came next, they'd face it together.
And that was enough. The end.